Boom, boom. How's it going? How's it going? Welcome aboard. It is I again, your boy TJ, and I am hanging out with my co-host Gareth Shepperson. And you all know if he is here, we're talking about nothing else than the property law or law in property, whichever way you want to look at it. Gareth, good morning, good afternoon. How are you? How you say good morning in Afrikaans, by the way?
Goeiemorgen.
Right. All right.
Okay.
Right.
Great to be with you, TJ. For those people who don't know, we normally film these episodes on a Friday. So every time you ask me how I'm doing, obviously much better for the fact that it's a Friday. Eh?
Good stuff. Good stuff. Gareth, today we've got a hot topic. I think this topic has been in the news for as long as I can remember. But for me, I think it is a topic that's been lingering on for the rest of my life, because I'm a true African and, you know, my lineage is in 3 countries. So I have seen this topic live in many different countries. And now it is here in South Africa. But you are going to give us a little bit of update on how things are going and whether this thing is going to come to life. What are we talking about, Gareth?
Okay, today we're talking about expropriation, and in particular, expropriation without compensation. And as you've just mentioned, obviously everyone has seen it's all over the news for the past while. I think it was first raised by the EFF and eventually adopted by the ANC and is being pushed through. It's part of the greater land restitution, land redistribution movement. And it has become a hot political potato. And we don't want to look at the hot political potato here. We're going to look at what it means, what it's all about, and where we can, in particular, what the focus is or should be for the property investor, what concerns the property investor should have about expropriation without compensation or expropriation in general.
Awesome stuff. Ladies and gentlemen, if you've never been here before, on here we talk about the facts, right? There is no gray area in here. We talk about the facts on where it is right now and how it impacts you as the property investor, because I'm a property investor. So that's why I hang out with people with Gareth who understand the law and who can afford to go and read 100 pages and come and dilute to us in 5 minutes.
Okay, well, yes, it will be a short look at it. It's obviously an extremely complicated and emotional topic. So let's just try and look at the basics of it. Expropriation is not a new concept. The first Expropriation Act, in fact, was published as far back as 1975, and people are not really aware of it because it seldom impacts people. But if you think about it, every time the government builds a road, builds a school, builds a dam, I mean, if you think of the size of the Val Dam or the Hartbeespoort Dam or whatever, there were people living there before that dam was built. And now it takes up a massive area where people's houses or farms or whatever were before that. And if the government didn't have the power to expropriate, they would never build a road or a dam because every seller would hold them to ransom. So for the public good, the Expropriation Act has existed in some form or fashion for many years, and it's generally for a good purpose and to ensure that infrastructure projects can be completed by the government. So yeah, that's where it comes from. Yeah. The specific issue that's the hot topic at the moment is obviously the question of the part being without compensation. And I think also this stems from all these land claims that were previously lodged, where the owner held out for the highest price possible. And obviously, if you're the landowner, you're going to hold out for the highest price possible. You're not an investor in land to be a charity or charitable in your intent. You're there to make a profit. So obviously it's understandable that land must be redistributed to people who've been deprived. And on the other side, for someone who has made an investment in property, obviously it's understandable that they want to make a return on that investment. So that's basically where it comes from. Sorry?
Can I ask a question then?
Yeah.
We have seen Gautrain coming in. Gautrain is the infrastructure of the government, right? And obviously they needed to have new rails and stations and things like that. At the moment, me and you, we are in Tshwane, Gauteng. The Gautrain is moving between the two of us. There is talk of extending it to the west and to the south and things like that. Am I correct by the fact to say that expropriation is almost, when the Gautrain is now moving into those areas and you've got a house, the government can actually decide to compensate you for the house so that they can pave way for the construction of that, right? So you get paid for your house. But in this case, we are talking about with no compensation. So we're saying we're just coming in to take your property so that we can have Gautrain. Is this the dummiest picture maybe?
That is it, and that's why it's controversial, because obviously as property investors viewing this this video, you don't want to be in a position where you invest into a piece of land or a house or whatever it is, a commercial building or whatever, with the knowledge in the back of your mind that potentially the government can take it away from you and you're going to get nothing in return. So you've spent $1 million, 2 million, 10 million, whatever it is, on a piece of property, and you can be stripped of ownership with no compensation. So yeah, that's basically where the political hot potato and the emotions and so on have come out. If we look at the actual draft bill, it mainly still looks at cases where just and equitable compensation must still be paid for expropriation. There's actually only a limited number of instances where there can be expropriation without compensation. The most relevant one of these, there's a list of about 5, I think, reasons where there needn't be compensation. But the one for property investors is the one that says that land not being used for its main purpose, or not being developed or used to generate an income, can be expropriated without compensation. So if you think that you've identified a piece of land and there are building developments coming at it from both sides, and you reckon that eventually that land is going to be the only land left in the area and therefore far more valuable to developers because it's rare, and you're just holding on to that land, then in a case like this, I think you run the risk of being caught out because you're not developing or not using the land for any profitable purpose. And you know as well as I do, TJ, that you can invest for capital gain and you can invest for income, or combination of both. And basically, if you're investing in land in the hope that someday in the future it will be more, in other words, investing for a capital gain, then you run a bit of a risk here. So that's where it's a bit tricky for property investors, and they must just be a little bit careful about just indefinitely holding on to land or just buying land because you think someday it will be worth something. In the past, no problem with that, especially if it's farmland, because the rates and taxes are low and you can, so the holding costs are not massive and you can afford to hold it for a while. And if you think that a city is developing out in that direction, then you can hold that land until the development reaches that stage, and suddenly your land is worth a lot more. So that's basically one of the things to look out for now as a property investor when it comes to expropriation. I must just mention that this bill was before Parliament last year in November, so it's November 2020, and it's still on the process of going through. And simultaneously, obviously in the Constitution, there's the right to property, and simultaneously there's a process which I'll go into just now to amend that the Constitution to accommodate a situation like this.
The question The question that I've got is, in and around land expropriation, is there a type of land that this bill is earmarking? Because I mean, all houses and businesses are all sitting on one type of the land, right? So is it agriculture? Is it, I don't know. The last I was reading, trying to attempt to read it, I was almost sounding like it's agriculture and nothing other than agriculture. But I mean, keep me in check here.
There's nothing that limits the scope of expropriation. It can be residential, it can be commercial, it can be anything. It all depends on the factors that why it's required, why it's just and equitable, and so on. So and you must remember always that the courts have a if you aggrieved by the expropriation that went on, you always have the right to take it to court and to challenge the fact either that it should not be expropriated in the first place, in other words, there's got no public benefit to such an expropriation, or secondly, that the compensation or lack of compensation is inadequate and that you should be compensated more. If you take it back to the beginning, as I mentioned, it started basically with the EFF and with land redistribution and land restitution. That obviously focuses more on agricultural land. Also remember that if you're a developer and you want to develop a new township, and I'm talking about township not in the sense of the common use of the word, but the actual piece of ground in terms of town planning. If you want to start a new suburb, basically, then you can only do that on agricultural land. So it's important for developers, even though it sounds like maybe it's only of importance to farmers, it's not only of importance to farmers because it directly affects developers.
Okay, so we're saying that at the moment almost sounds like if we had to have a scale of risk, agriculture is at a high risk, but it doesn't take away all of us who have buildings and student accommodation. It can impact us. But we need also to wait for the process to unfold. That's number one. And then number two, you still have the right to object on either what you're being paid or object on the reasons on why it's being, where the property is being taken away, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's another interesting fact is that, as we know, especially for those people who are investing in the Western Cape, property prices there are driven primarily by foreign investors. If you look at the likes of the Cliftons and so on, and even slightly further afield from that, those prices are being driven up by foreign investors, and that's a great opportunity for property investors. If you see that the prices are going to be driven up, you buy now, you sell for more later, or you rent out to foreigners on a B&B or anything like that. You can make money out of property because it's attractive to foreign investors. And a lot of the concern about the expropriation bill has been that by passing the expropriation bill and changing Section 25 of the Constitution, which is the right to property, there's a concern that foreign investment would be curtailed because the investor has got no security of title. They don't know that if they invest in the property, it might be expropriated the next day. Yes, that is a concern. But what we also need to remember is that there are over 3,000 international treaties that govern investments by foreigners in countries. And South Africa is a signatory to quite a number of those treaties. And also that there are United Nations resolutions and basically, what do you call them? They're not treaties, but the UN rights, human rights, Bill of Human Rights, and the European Bill of Human Rights and the African Union Bill of Rights. All of those, South Africa are signatories to those. So any change in legislation in South Africa would have to be in the context of those treaties and bills of human rights that form part of it. So yes, there is a concern. I cannot just say there is no concern, that if your target market for your B&B or your property investment that you're making is to eventually benefit from foreign investment, there is a small concern, but I think the concern is mitigated to a certain extent by our own constitution and the fact that we cannot change our constitution too easily. And remember that in deciding such things, when you approach the courts, one of the things that the courts take into consideration is foreign legislation and so on, and treaties that the country is a signatory to. So there is a concern there, but I don't think that it's sufficient of a concern to persuade investors who see an opportunity to market to a foreign market to just abandon that plan totally.
Gareth, the question then I want to ask is, whilst everything is happening, as a property investor like me, what should I do?
Okay. Well, there's not, in short, there's not much you can do. There's not much you can do. If your property is going to be expropriated, your property is going to be expropriated, whether it's for a dam, a road, or in order to fulfill some sort of restitution or redistribution scenario. So there is not a lot you can do. Again, remember that it must be for a public benefit or the good of the public, and that the compensation must be just and equitable. So even under the brand new bill, those conditions would still apply. It just makes one change in that in certain very limited, or not very limited, in certain limited cases, there can be cases where there's no compensation. So your rights to compensation are there. The compensation must be just and equitable, and the reason for the expropriation must be appropriate. So yes, there's not much you can do upfront when you're investing in a property to determine that. Yes, if you see a road is part built or something, and the next property in line is yours, you might be a bit worried, but actually, if you get reasonable compensation, maybe that gives you a bit of cash to develop the rest of the property. So it might even be an opportunity. I don't think that will happen very often, but there could be a limited opportunity there. Yeah. So you can't really do much up front.
Yeah.
All you need to do is know your rights, so that once you receive your expropriation notice, you don't just simply give in and surrender. There are certain rules and regulations and legislation that the government must comply with. And remember, expropriation needn't be the national government. It could be local and provincial as well. So whoever's expropriating, it must be transparent and so on. So make sure of your rights, make sure you know your rights. Go and see an attorney if you need to, but make sure that you get your fair and reasonable value for your property that is being expropriated.
It might be premature for me to ask this question, Gareth, because I think the last that we might have seen, I don't know whether there have been cases of expropriation in between. I've never met a case like this one. But as a property investor, how would I actually know that my land is earmarked for expropriation? Like, what kind of a document comes through to me?
The government would serve an expropriation notice on you as the landowner. If you are in the process of buying land, in your offer to purchase, maybe not in some offers to purchase, but in a lot of offers to purchase, there's certain warranties that are included. And quite often amongst the warranties is that the person is authorized to sell and is not aware of any conditions that would prevent them from selling and so on. So if the seller is aware that there's an expropriation in process, they are duty bound in terms of those warranties to disclose it. If they don't, they are in breach of the warranties, and you would have a claim against that seller for concealing that from you.
Awesome stuff. So Gareth, your baby steps here, you're saying the moment that you receive that letter, it is advisable that you seek legal advice. And they can then now start working on your behalf in terms of getting through to, is there compensation or not? And if it is, can you object to it? Can you also object to the expropriation and all of those things? But a lawyer now needs to help you. Preferably, I always say to people, don't go to a family lawyer and things like that. Preferably a property lawyer, someone who is in that industry, someone like Gareth. So yeah, I think I understand it. At the moment, guys, you, me, we can do anything, right? The law, or should I say the parliament and all of these things, these bills needs to be put in place. If you get served with a letter, don't email me, please, right? I am not that guy. Gareth will help you. I can't help you. But Gareth, I think maybe I'm gonna say to the people, if anyone ever gets a letter and they were from this community, for educational purposes, I would like us to understand how does that work, because I think it's a once in a lifetime for us to have these kind of things and how they are going to unfold. But for now, can we end it here, Gareth?
Good. Yeah, we can end it here. Again, I'll just end by saying there are unknowns. The process going forward is unknown. We will see what happens. We will monitor it, and if there are any developments, maybe we will provide an update by video so that people are fully aware of the direction that things are going.
Awesome stuff. You heard it right from the guy who knows law better than I do. We will see you on the next video.